Welcome back to the Great Books Quest. Today's video is on Politics, Book 1 by Aristotle. I read this book about 10 years ago, and it was disturbing for me at that time. I read it now, and there's still disturbing elements. I feel I understand Aristotle a little bit better about where he's coming from. The thing about literature, especially ancient literature, as in written 2,500 years ago, is you can't read it from your own perspective in your society, in your time, and 2,500 years of moral progress. And then from your point of view. There's a lot of talk about slavery, natural slavery, in Politics, Book 1. And from our perspective, it seems extremely antiquated, because it is. So we have to try to put ourselves in that situation, as difficult as it is, put ourselves in Aristotle's shoes as much as we can and try to figure out what he's actually saying. So, what is he saying here? What he's saying is that, again, like in the Republic, it's all about communities. People come together and they form villages, and then villages all come together and then they form the city. And the purpose of the city is to have all these different families, to create this ethical society. And the families exist to provide for a man's wants and needs. And there are three primary ways that a man's needs get fulfilled in the family. One is the master-slave relationship, two is the husband-wife relationship, and three is the father-children relationship. And there are many similarities in these three, he posits. First, let's go to the master-slave relationship. Now, Aristotle argues that there is a thing called natural slavery, which is opposed to captured slavery. So, for example, if a society invades another and they take their people hostage as prisoners, as slaves, that's different. That's not natural slavery. You might have people who are fit to be rulers who are actually put in the position of slavery. What he's talking about here as natural slavery is the certain psychological personality type that is not for leadership, more disposed towards being told what to do. But what Aristotle also gets at here, he mentions that this person, the natural slave, does not have a deliberative faculty. And I argue, I'm wondering, is it that this natural slave type doesn't have a deliberative faculty, or is it that it's not being used or developed? Because you see somebody as a slave and you say, you are naturally disposed to be a slave, and so that's what you're going to be. Today is the eve of Passover, and we as Jews celebrate the exodus from slavery in Egypt. And I wonder what message God is trying to send by having me study this during the week before Passover. I didn't do this on purpose. It kind of just fit perfectly in the schedule, and the timing coincided with today. I wonder what the message is about slavery, about studying the one book about slavery that I really had a tough time with on Passover, and recording the video today here. The message is that perhaps there are some intellectual people out there in this world who can argue with all types of amazing rhetorical devices and logical deductions why people should be slaves. And this argument, I feel it has been used to justify all types of human atrocities. Now remember, slavery is not necessarily back then a terrible thing as what we have made of it. That when somebody is in a position of power, we as human beings, as a general rule, we will abuse that position of power. And if somebody is a master over a slave, it's almost guaranteed to abuse that power. husband and wife relationship. Now, this is an interesting point because Aristotle was much more evolved in his views of women than a lot of other people. When you read it, you think, oh, he's just saying that women just should be at home and they should submit to their husbands and just obey, and that's what they do. However, and I found this out reading an analysis about politics, there's a quote there. Aristotle quotes a Greek play, was Ajax by Sophocles, and he writes, in that play, the quote is, "Silence is a woman's ornament or adornment." It's a great adornment for a woman to be silent. And the great irony is, this play that he quoted involved the main character disregarded the advice of a woman, and that led to tragedy for him. And so Aristotle must have been quoting this as some kind of veiled reference to what he actually believes about women and about listening to women in society, despite his seemingly very harsh tones of writing about this, about the relationship between men and women. He also writes about there are two types of rules. There's a kingly rule and there's a constitutional rule. The kingly rule, he says, it's more associated with a personal government. That would be master-slave or parent-child, very authoritative. And then there's constitutional rule, which is a rule between equals, where the two people are equal, but the one who is to be ruled agrees to give authority to the leader. It's constitutional. That's an interesting point. And so he mentions that the husband and wife are equals. Remember that. He mentions that. They are equals. However, the wife cedes authority to the husband in this particular relationship for the good of the household. And then we have the art of wealth getting, which is part of household management. The main thing about managing a household is you have to acquire items. You have to keep the household afloat. You need money in order to manage it. And you have things like being a shepherd or being a farmer or being a hunter. You have things that are designed to meet your wants, to meet your needs. But then, seeing as man's wants are unlimited, some people see wealth getting as not a part of household management. They see wealth getting as an art in and of itself, where you're trying to get unlimited funds to procure for your unlimited wants. And he says that's a problem. Then you have money lending, which is the worst of the worst, because you're just lending out money and you're getting interest and you're not contributing, in a sense. Not exactly friendly with finance is Aristotle. So not friendly with making wealth getting an art in and of itself. But wealth getting is necessary for the management of the household. Wow. It's an interesting read. If you read it from the perspective of the 21st century, it might be pretty, and you've never read Aristotle before, you might be pretty surprised at some of the things that he says in this book. Even me, having read so much in terms of ancient literature, I haven't actually read that much. I'm correcting myself. I haven't read that much, but I've read for a fairly long period of time, although I haven't read that many works. But even this is pretty intense compared to all the other works that I've read. Still remains one of those difficult books. But I will say, I am sure that this book is responsible for tremendous human suffering. For Aristotle does write about abolitionists in his time who argued against natural slavery. But he argues for it. I wish that smart people, really intellectual people, would be more in line with God and morality. And not use their intellect to promulgate an argument that will lead future generations to interpret that argument as it suits their own avarice. Today's a day. We'll see you later. Take care.